Reclaiming the West, one man at a time, FTNCI Meetup 1. What is value-based mentoring? Thanks for joining on this video. The point of the video is to give you an overview of what I want to discuss. I figured we could save some time as a group if I just send you my notes and my discussion of those notes ahead of time so that we can skip straight to discussing once we get together. I'll put this on YouTube as an unlisted video, and you can click double speed or 1.5 speed or whatever, so you can cruise through this. So value-based mentoring is a model that I've designed for understanding what Christian mentoring is and how to create it. Given FTNCI's aims, I believe it'll be strategic to use this model and also to help others use it. I've shared with you a bit about why I came up with the model. Here I want to tell you about the model itself and invite feedback and discussion about the concept and about whether and how we can start implementing it. It starts with two assumptions. One is that Christians ought to be positioning themselves for influence, and the other is the institutional church is not the only channel of influence Christians should have. So let's discuss both of those. Proverbs 27 tells us that iron sharpens iron, one man sharpens another. We are all aware of this. We need strong men with a plan. A lot of us are sensing that we need a plan for creating a shift in our society, even in our churches. And we don't really have a full plan yet, other than to keep up with the daily responsibilities and challenges that we have and to survive. We need to start thinking in terms of building. And what we're going to build might not be something that we do through the institutional church. The question that I'm asking is, what is my life going to add up to? I know that I'm going to have my work revealed someday, and so I'm asking myself, will I be found to have glorified God with my spiritual influence? And I'm thinking about 1 Corinthians 3, if the work that anyone has built on the foundation, that's Christ, survives, he will receive a reward. Some of us are going to be in the position of hearing that our works were like gold or like silver. Some of us are going to hear that our work was like hay, wood, stubble, straw. And we're going to survive only as through fire. And so we have to ask ourselves, what do I want that situation to be? That's the end state. And now we begin this plan with that end in mind. Now, number two, the other assumption was the institutional church is not the only channel of influence that Christians should have. Throughout the ages, Christians have been a source of encouragement to one another in a personal basis, and it doesn't have to go through an official church channel. And the reality today is that not a lot of churches are in a really strong place philosophically or in terms of their cultural discernment, understanding, courage. And so we have an opportunity to meet a need that exists right now. And one way we can do that is by using online connections that we already have. Find people who share a high level of understanding of cultural and philosophical issues and help those people. Now, when I say mentoring, I'm not talking about talking to somebody who's not a Christian about why they should be a Christian. I'm not talking about somebody who is a very immature Christian and trying to teach them to be a basically decent Christian. What I'm talking about is finding somebody who is a decent Christian and helping them become a leader. We're talking about finding somebody who's like a Timothy, who already understands the faith, and being a Paul to that person. Saying, imitate me as I imitate Christ. And what that looks like is, I want you to be a leader. Now, the cool thing about this is that when Paul says to Timothy, I want you to be a leader, Paul is being a leader in that moment, and he's also equipping Timothy to be a leader. So there's a meta thing going on there. And that is what I think we need to be doing. As I give more discussion about this, I think it'll be clear why this is so valuable. So the frameworks, there's 5 of them, and it just so happened that I think the easy way to explain them is that there's one that has the number 1 in it, and there's one that has the number 2 in it, and so on. So they're actually in order of that. So the first one I want to point out to you is called your gift. Now, the question that I'm asking myself is, what am I doing today to give the Lord a return on his investment? And I think the right answer to that question is men who are spiritually and intellectually strong should be creating one-on-one mentoring relationships to grow the other person in their wisdom, in their success. A mature Christian man is going to seek to be a mentor. He's also going to seek to have a mentor. That could change from one season of life to another. Who the mentor is can change, but I do think that a mature Christian man will be seeking to have a mentor. He will be seeking to be a mentor. And that's what I want to do. That's what I want to do myself. That's what I want to ask you guys to do. And that's what I want to teach other people to do as well. Now, the particular model that I have here, this value-based mentoring, is going to be founded on a thesis. It's called the gift thesis. Every Christian has a gift that he's capable of giving to another person. It is simply to show another person what you see about their value. So that's the thesis on which all of this approach rests. Now, the idea is that a more mature Christian spends time with a younger Christian, talks with them about the things of God, lets them know that they matter, that they can see God's work in their life, that they're excited about seeing more of God's work in their life, talking about what they're experiencing, what their challenges are, perhaps doing a book study together. But the goal is to bring out the value in the other person. It's not, let me present to you what I know, necessarily. It's not the focus. The goal is to give them a gift. And the gift is visibility of their value. And because you are further along in life, you're able to say, this is what I see that God is doing in your life. This is what I see that you've got right. This is what is pleasing to God about what you are doing or what you're saying, and I appreciate it. That is the kind of gift that you can give somebody that even if it's for a short period of time in their life, they will carry it forward. It will be like something that they have on their tool belt the rest of their life, that memory that there was this person that invested in them, because it will change how they see themselves and their identity. And that persists. So that's what I mean by value-based mentoring. I thought about calling it gift-based because I thought, oh, here's my gift toward another person. But I realized, no, even then, I want to not highlight the fact that it's my gift. I want to highlight the fact that it's bringing out the other person's value. That is the gift that you give them. All right, now the form that you deliver this mentoring can be varied. It could be just as simple as getting together with somebody for coffee or tea. It could be that you do a once-a-month phone call for an hour and you talk to them about what's on their mind, their challenges, a Bible passage that's on your mind, a concept that you wrote something about, their life goals. It could be more of a coaching type of a thing where it's like, hey, I want to know how to do this thing. Could you coach me on how to do it? Or it could be more broad mentoring, which would be, I am doing a regular commitment to spend time with you, but without a specific structure. All right, so the requirements for being able to be in this kind of mentoring relationship, either to be the mentor or the mentee, would be that the mentor has to be at a more advanced stage in life, preferably also in spiritual maturity, but also just in their age or experience, and that the mentee is younger and sees the other person as a potential source of wisdom. And the other thing is that both mentor and mentee have to be living their lives faithfully unto the Lord. In other words, both people need to be on the right side of personal discipline, which leads to the second framework that I want to share with you. Now, in the second framework, it's framework number 2. There's two sides here. There's the right side and there's the wrong side of discipline. So a lot of young or youngish Christian men are struggling with mental clarity because of a lack of personal discipline, especially consistency in reading the Bible, prayer, attending church, avoiding sinful habits. And this leads to a sense of drift in life. Every Christian man is either on the right side or on the wrong side of personal discipline. I mean, we could quibble about, like, okay, so how it's possible that somebody could have read the Bible 3 times this week or 4 times or 5 times, or it's possible that somebody has gone a month without indulging in some kind of sinful habit, or 2 months or 3 months. We could quibble about that, but the point is, if you ask yourself in your own heart right now, am I living a disciplined life? Am I making the best attempt I know how to live for God? You'll know the answer. You'll know whether or not you're on the right side or the wrong side of discipline. Everybody knows. And when people are on the wrong side, well, the sad thing is that they cannot be a mentor to anybody else. They cannot be a leader. They're not ready. It would be bad for them to be a leader. And so that's what you're missing out on. I mean, you're also in danger of hell itself. But the most immediate danger is that you're wasting your days, your months, your years. You are wasting the opportunity to be growing somebody else. It's a missed opportunity. And so I think that we need to talk about this as Christian men. We need to help other men by using this framework, talking openly about it. Hey, are you mentoring another person? Or are you not yet spiritually ready to mentor another person because you've got to clean up your life right now? And so that's this framework that we can use, and we can talk openly about it. And it's easier, rather than saying like, hey, are you addicted to sin? We can say, are you on the right side of discipline? Or are you on the wrong side of discipline? It's one or the other. And a large part of our mission as Christian men is to get on the right side, to stay on the right side, and then to look at our brothers and say to them, like, hey, you need to be on the right side of this too. Let me challenge you to do it. And then as we grow in our leadership, we even begin equipping others to do what we're doing. So then we provoke others to love and good deeds. We provoke others, hey, you need to be out there encouraging your brothers too. So you're encouraging other people to encourage. It's meta. Now, what I want to say about value-based mentoring, about this framework that I'm advocating here, is you can't even participate in value-based mentoring unless you're already on the right side of discipline. And that doesn't mean that we're not actually able to help people who are on the wrong side, but the way we help them is we tell them, hey, I'm confronting you on your sin. You need to be confronted. You might even need to be evangelized. You might not even understand Jesus has commands for you. And if you don't understand that, like, your theology's in need of correction very desperately. You might even not even be a Christian, right? So we potentially would evangelize or confront backsliding Christians. And one of the ways that we confront them is we tell them, hey, we do this mentoring thing, and we would love for you to be a part of it. In order for you to be part of it, you're going to have to start living unto the Lord. And so actually it's helpful to them. It's helpful that we could use this as a point of confrontation because, hey, we want you to be part of what we're doing, and here's what we're asking of you. So it's actually a good thing if you have to tell somebody, hey, you're not able to be a mentor or a mentee. It's going to offer clarity about their own spiritual situation and what they need to do for themselves, because you cannot solve that problem for them. You can tell them what is true, and that's it. They have to do the cleaning up of their own life, their own choices, their own values. And if you get into a mentoring situation with somebody who is in a cycle of addiction, they're just going to be coming to you to be like, I feel bad this week. Or they're going to be coming to you to say, like, how can you help me? And it's like, I can't. And unfortunately, sometimes a mentoring relationship with such a person can actually backfire because it just creates discord between the people. Because it's like, no, you need to do this, and you need to do it right now, and you need to do it all on your own. That's all I can tell you. Some supporting passages for these convictions that I'm sharing with you right now are 1 John 3:6. No one who abides in him keeps on sinning. No one who keeps on sinning has either seen him or known him. And Hebrews 10:26-27. If we go on sinning deliberately after receiving the knowledge of the truth, there no longer remains a sacrifice for sins, but a fearful expectation of judgment and a fury of fire that will consume the adversaries. So that's the second framework. It's the two sides of personal discipline. Now the third framework. Every man that's a Christian ought to have three main relationships. Now, you could sort all of your relationships in your life into sort of one of these three categories, but I'm specifically talking about your relationships with other Christian men that are your friends. So I've heard it said that every Christian man needs a Paul, a Barnabas, and a Timothy. And that actually implies that every man needs to be a Paul to somebody else. Because if you're if you have a Timothy in your life, then you're the Paul to him. And you would also need a Barnabas. And actually, the way this works on the analogy is that it's like, I'm a Barnabas to you, you're a Barnabas to me. That's how the analogy works. And then the other one would be, you need to be a Timothy to somebody else. In other words, you need a Paul in your life so that you're the Timothy to the Paul, speaking by analogy there. So you are in a position where there's someone, if you are in a position where there is something new that you want to accomplish, and you've never done it before, and you lack knowledge and clarity, then you might need a Paul. Whereas if you're in a position where you have a good deal of clarity already about what you're doing, but you are feeling tired, you're in need of motivation, then guess what? You might need a Barnabas. If you're highly knowledgeable in some area, you're passionate about helping another person increase in his abilities and fruitfulness, you might need a Timothy. That's how that works. That's that framework. So it's three different kinds of relationships that you should seek to have in your life. You ought to have all three, but you might ask yourself, right now, do I have one? Do I have two? Do I have three? If I'm going to go create a new one, which one do I want to create? What's the most important one right now that's missing? All right, now another framework. This is the 4 stages of spiritual fruit. So fittingly enough, it's framework number 4. This framework references some of the same Bible personalities, but it's actually about who you are at a given point in time. So I'm going to say that you could be at the stage where you need to become like Nicodemus or Peter or like Barnabas or like Paul. So this is sort of a different framework, okay? So spiritual fruit means the following kinds of things, and it's in cumulative stages. This is what your life ought to look like as you build your life over the years. Stage 1 is you become like Nicodemus. That is, you find the truth about Christ. You get honest. You obey Christ. You get yourself on the right side of discipline. Now, once you have done that, you've obtained that, then stage 2 is to become like Peter. Now, remember what happened in Acts chapter 2. So Peter preached to everyone about what Christ had done for him. Find someone else who needs to trust in Jesus and learn to obey Jesus. Talk to non-Christians, talk to backsliders, help them see the need for a change in their own life. That's when you become like Peter. Now, stage 3 would be to become like Barnabas. Help someone who is on the right side of discipline, personally, and who is already a Christian, and he needs vision, he needs encouragement. So if you have a friend who is already living as a faithful Christian, he's already not currently engaged in leading anything or actively creating spiritual fruit in the life of anyone else outside of his own family, challenge him to do so. Now, the Barnabas is a challenger. He says, hey, I see that you are already like Nicodemus. But he says to his friend, you're like Nicodemus, but you need to become like Peter. That's the direction of that one. So at stage 3, become like Barnabas. Help someone. And your act of bearing fruit in this case is to encourage another person to begin bearing fruit himself. So it's the meta level. When calling other people to a higher vision of leadership, it's best to make sure that you already are modeling that vision yourself. So make sure that you are at least at stage 2. Otherwise, you cannot go to stage 3. Now let's go to stage 4. Become like Paul. It says, find someone who needs not only your encouragement, but your guidance. Become a mentor to that person. In 1 Corinthians 11:1, we read, be imitators of me, as I am of Christ. If Paul was allowed to call on other people to imitate him, then it must be permissible for mature followers of Christ to do the same. We should be willing to say to another person, I am following Christ, and you imitate me in that. The substance of this relationship is that a more mature Christian spends time with a younger Christian, and they discuss spiritual things. Now, it might be occasional or regular. It might be stated goals or not, but the concept is that the older spends time with the younger because he sees value and untapped potential in him. This is how you become like Paul. This kind of mentoring relationship gives you the ability to not merely be a recipient of God's blessings, but also a conduit of God's blessings. You're not just the one who receives the teaching each Sunday morning, but you're the one that delivers the teaching. All right, let's go on to framework 5. These are steps for creating value-based mentoring, and I just want to suggest 5 questions. Each question is basically a step as you clarify your own intentions around this idea. So the kind of mentoring that I'm describing would be a free thing, not a service that's purchased. Just to clarify, this is just voluntary. It would be a situation in which a more mature Christian meets with a younger Christian for a predetermined number of times by phone or Zoom over a period of months so that it would not be a large time commitment. Now, so I'm going to suggest that you start out by having a predetermined number of meetings, because that creates a sunset opportunity where if this relationship is not to your liking, or if it's the kind of situation where you can't commit to it long term, you automatically have an exit point, or a point where you can choose to recommit for another season. Now, it could be that you just have an organically developing mentor relationship with somebody as well. That can happen. But I want to suggest that if you want to be intentional about it, you should seek to have something that's like I'm describing here, where you would set up a number of phone calls, especially if we're doing it through the opportunities afforded with online connections. You don't have an ongoing context with somebody that you're naturally going to run into them like you would at church. So having a predetermined number of meetings could be a useful framework for you. All right, now let's talk about the questions that I would propose that you think through as you're deciding whether this belongs in your life in this season. So number 1 is, am I ready to be doing this kind of thing? Now, imagine what it would be like to have a growing relationship with another person in which God is using you as a conduit of his truth, and in a way that's going to bless that person, it's going to grow your influence, it's going to build God's kingdom. Think about what that's like. Now, do you ever want there to be a time in your life where you're just not doing this? Why not? Really think about that. To me, it sounds like a component of your life is just missing if you don't have that. It'd be like, oh, I just want to just not exercise for this season, or I just want to not read my Bible for this season. I think that being a mentor to another person is a spiritual discipline that we all ought to have, especially if we are growing, if we want to grow, and if we want to invest in God's kingdom. So it is likely, if we were to get real right now, like most of us probably do not have all 3 of these kinds of relationships where I have a Paul, I have a Timothy, I have a Barnabas. But I want you to imagine what the long-term effects would be if the FTNCI brothers did all have all three of those relationships at any given time. If we had those kinds of relationships, and we were taking the time to do that work, even if it's an hour once a month, what would that do for FTNCI's ability to equip leaders to become pastors, to become teachers? What would that do for us over the years if we made a practice of doing this? Also, what would it do for us personally, for our sense of momentum, of having God's hand in our life, of being used by God? What is that worth? I want to tell you, at various seasons in my life, mentoring and being mentored have both been a very big deal to me, and the experiences have shaped who I am. There were key times where there were pastors who helped me in all the ways that I just described to you. So they would get together with me for coffee. They would read a Sproul book, C.S. Lewis. They would discuss the Bible with me. They would invite me out to a hamburger and simply say, so what have you been reading in your Bible lately? And you can imagine what that's like when you're a teenager and your pastor asks you that. It makes you feel seen. It makes you feel like your spiritual life matters to him. He's given you some direction, even just by being there and by asking you that simple question. It's not like he has to teach you anything. He's just being in your life. Now, I've also been that to other people. I've been able to sit with younger men and talk with them about the Bible or about their challenges or about their goals. And these experiences have been challenging to me, and they've helped me to grow in my understanding, my patience, grow spiritually in trusting God and in thinking logically and in understanding. And so as I've been able to spend time with these other men, I've learned what the average life is like for a lot of Christian men, understanding their challenges and finding out what they're actually like, what their spiritual level of understanding is. And this has helped me to grow. It's helped me to figure out what the needs are so that I can figure out how to meet them. So I believe we should all be able to see the need for this kind of thing if we were to get real about it. And I believe that if we were to make the effort, I believe that God would bless this effort. So, assuming that you're on the right side of discipline, I would suggest, even just right now, ask yourself, could I begin being a mentor? Or could I seek out a mentor? Could I create this relationship? I think it would be a priority for you. All right, so that's the first question. Now, number 2 is, would the time commitment be reasonable for me? Because that's the first concern that a lot of people are going to have. The sort of mentoring that I'm describing is not a high time commitment. What it takes in time, it actually makes up for by giving you a personal sense of momentum, fulfillment, that a lot of men tend to be lacking if they don't have a channel for their energies. So this is actually going to boost your energy. It's going to be a gain, not a loss. Now, it's possible that if this is something that you keep within specified expectations, it could be very reasonable. It could be like once a month, I'm going to get on the phone with you for 30 minutes or for 60 minutes. This is not unreasonable. If it's not possible to add that level of mentoring in your life, I would ask you to think about what you're actually doing with your time. Like, is your life in the long term sustainable if that is really too big of an ask? How are you living your life if that's really the case? And what are your priorities? So then, all right, the next thing I want to ask is, well, before I go on to the next one, I just want to point out, like, you might be asking, okay, well, it's one thing to deliver that time, but it's another thing to actually, like, identify the person. And that's something that I would help you with, because it turns out that there's other people that want the same kinds of things, and then I can help you match with another person. And I can also offer ideas about how to get started, like how to have that conversation to onboard somebody. So it doesn't have to be like this big learning curve for how to develop this. It can be something that you just develop as you go. All right, let's go on to this third question that I want to ask. This third question is, you should ask yourself, how do I identify a person to mentor or to be mentored by? Now, some of us have only had limited experience being a spiritual mentor, and it's possible that some of us might have never been a mentor to anybody before. Or it's possible that some of us have never been on either side of this kind of relationship. So I'll tell you, I've used several approaches to creating mentoring relationships, and I want to share with you basically a plan for how you could go about discovering who you would want to mentor or be mentored by, and then making that relationship a reality. I mean, the steps are pretty logical. It's first ask yourself if you're on the right side of discipline. If not, you're really not ready for this kind of relationship. You have to change your own life by an act of your own will. But if you are on the right side of discipline, you ask yourself some questions that determine what kind of relationship might be missing from your life. So, are you in the position right now where there's something new you want to accomplish, you've never done it before, you lack knowledge and clarity, you might need a Paul. Whereas if you already have the good deal of clarity, but you need motivation, you might need a Barnabas. And you're already highly knowledgeable in that situation, you just want to help somebody else grow in their abilities, their faithfulness, you might need a Timothy in your life. Now, if more than one category applies, well, then you should just ask where the greatest need is for you right now. And also be open to thinking about whether there are other people that have a great need that you could meet. Now, how would you actually find this person? Suppose you've already determined that this is what you're looking for. So how would you find a Paul? Well, find someone who's already doing mentoring. If somebody is a pastor already, they're probably doing mentoring. Or if somebody is writing, or if they have a podcast about theology, they're probably already mentoring people. So those would be the obvious starting points. You might know somebody personally, just through conversation. You happen to know that they mentor other people. That would be an obvious one to talk to. If it's somebody that's teaching a Bible study, that would be a good candidate. It should probably be somebody who is 10 years older than you, or a generation older than you, to be considered a mentor. You want somebody who's experienced things that you haven't, and that you have. Now, understand that it's actually easier to ask somebody to be your mentor than it is for somebody to be like, hey, do you want me to mentor you? So if you are needing a mentor, you ought to take the initiative. Now, that doesn't mean that the other person can't also, but if you really want it, you should go find it. And let somebody know this is the kind of thing that you're looking for, because maybe if they are a mentor to other people, they would be willing to offer it to you. Or maybe if they're not able to, they could at least direct you to somebody who else is, because think about it, mentors know other mentors. All right, so let's say you needed to find a Barnabas. Well, suppose you find somebody who could seemingly, they might be a potential mentor or mentee for you, but it turns out that as you get to know them, there's not a big, clear difference in your stage of life. Well, then you've found a potential Barnabas. And that's a little bit outside of the topic of value-based mentoring. But they should still be in your life. You're just going to have to find a way to include them in your life that's not directly about mentoring. And then the way to find Timothy, well, that'd be to talk to people about how churches seem to be falling down in the area of cultural discernment. Like, think about what I do on Facebook. I talk about this all the time, or on Twitter, or in message groups, or even personally. I talk to people and I say, did you notice that churches are getting this wrong about Timothy Keller or Russell Moore or whatever? Talk to people about the things that you're concerned about, right? And then you say, well, do you agree with that? And then if so, then maybe another question that you might ask them is, so tell me about your life. Tell me about how things are going for you spiritually. Find out whether they're on the right side of spiritual discipline, your personal discipline. And, if they meet that criteria, well, then maybe you want to talk to them about, so I've been reading in Proverbs 27. It talks about iron sharpens iron. Tell me about what you have in your life that matches that. And you're asking these questions because you want to learn about their own life. Like, where are you? And if it turns out that they already have relationships where they're mentoring other people, well, great. And if not, then you want to ask them, well, what do you think it would look like if you did have iron sharpening iron? And so then I'll describe the next steps below, but you get the idea. That's how you could find a Timothy potentially. So, all right, number 4 is, how do I establish a mentoring relationship? So you've done what I was just describing. You've realized this person is interested in the idea of iron sharpening iron, but they don't know what to do. So this is mainly a matter of being forward-thinking, being intentional, being available. Once you've identified a prospective mentee, say something to them that's just like the following. From getting to know you, it's clear that you take your relationship with God seriously. I can see God's grace in your life. And then just stop and see what they say. But if they are able to be receptive to that, and it's the kind of thing that seems right to say, you might say, would you be open to getting together and talking about whatever is on your mind as far as your life goals right now, or about what you're reading in the Bible lately? So you've already established the context where you can ask that question. Could read a book of the Bible together over a period of weeks, meet to discuss it, and just let them know, hey, the purpose here is not that I'm trying to move you through a curriculum. The book is providing a foundation for discussion, for us to have something to talk about. And the purpose is to make a personal connection, to communicate together. And I really want you to know that you matter. to me, you matter to the church, your spiritual life matters. And that's the point of this. All right, and then the last question that I think you should ask is, okay, so you're probably asking, once a mentoring relationship is established, what do I actually do once that is happening? What do I do on day number 1, day number 2? Now, the focus might just be, like I mentioned, reading a short book or reading a book in the Bible, discussing it. You could use FTNCI material or other blog material if you're interested in that, and if the mentee is interested in it. And an alternative would be to just focus it on a specific goal or project that the person is working on. I have guides that I've created about this. I have templates that I can recommend, and I'll share more about that below. But let's go on to the last part of the presentation that I want to share with you right now. So turning value-based mentoring into a reality. So I am planning to publish some Google Doc quick guides, templates for mentoring conversations, and you'll be able to use those as the occasion requires. And I'm also considering ways to raise awareness about value-based mentoring in public to facilitate connections with people in our audience so that we can encourage people to form these relationships. I was talking with Jacob Brunton. He pointed out that public group discussions create a sense of community, and it would be great if we could have that as part of this. And so I would propose that we would use group chats, and we would use public discussions either on video or Twitter Spaces. We would call them FTNCI meetups, and we would raise awareness about the mentoring concept. And would also make people aware that we can be helpful to them in forming connections. And there are some ways that I'll talk about what that looks like. So in the FTNCI meetups, here's what we would do. We would address issues of general interest for people as they are mentoring, such as sharing the kind of ideas that I'm sharing with you today, sharing access to the Google Doc quick guides, templates, discussing them, and even doing some discussion of people's personal goals and leadership problem solving, that kind of thing. Now, the meetups would be a place to invite people to join our chat groups. The chat groups, vice versa, would promote the meetups as well, so we get people on live. Now, I would offer a sign-up form where somebody can fill out like a short questionnaire to get an appointment with me to do a one-on-one call on the phone. That would be the next step if somebody was already in a chat group or if they were in a meetup like this. And the form would just say, like, hey, I'm interested in talking about this idea of mentoring with you. I'm interested in being connected with either a mentor or a mentee. And that screens them out so that I don't get on the phone with just anybody. But once I get on the phone, I find out who they are. I make notes about them, about where they are, what they're looking for, and about what their interests are, perhaps where they are geographically. And then I put them on my list so I can potentially connect them with another person. And that would be the extent of my direct involvement with their mentoring activity and with FTNCI's involvement. It's not like FTNCI or I are supervising this, giving certification or oversight. What we're doing is just providing people with vision for why it matters and what it would look like to do it. And then we're helping them with their personal networking. So we're introducing them to people. And, I would, with permission, I would say to somebody, hey, this other person is looking for this kind of connection. Could I introduce them to you? And if they both give permission, then I would introduce them by messenger or phone or whatever. So what I would suggest for doing these live FTNCI meetups would be a once per month live event, maybe an hour long or half an hour long. For our purposes, it'd be fine. And we already have chat groups, so we can use those that already exist. We don't have to make a new one. And I would advertise the event to people in the chat groups, on our social media, and in our email list. All right, let's talk about why this is a good investment. And this will be the thing I close with. So the value-based mentoring concept, this process, puts us in a position to develop a generation of new leaders. And they're going to be leaders that have their spiritual and their intellectual priorities straight. The mentoring helps them with both. And that's what's needed. Because, honestly, if you look at the generation right now, there's very few people that have both of those things straight. So I think this is also going to be a key to the long-term funding of FTNCI and the distribution of FTNCI's materials. Just envision what would happen if we had a live activity of this kind of thing going on. Think about our situation currently. We do not have a ready audience who's willing to fund our project outside of some very special people, very few in number. But we can change that fact in the future if we were to create the right kind of spiritual leaders. Imagine what would happen to FTNCI's donor base if pastors loved FTNCI and they gave out our books. We should be training those future pastors. We can have that. We just have to take the steps now to lay the foundation for that in the future. It can be done. And it does not require us to constantly be debating people who hate us or who want to trample on our values. Basically, we beat the pastors at their own game. We provide men in the church with an understanding of what it actually means to be salt and light in the world, how to think about moral questions, how to be a better leader. Because what we're going to do is we're going to mentor one person, and then we're going to encourage them to mentor another person. And so we're providing a path of leadership for people like us, people that don't buy into the big Eva model. This is going to answer a question that a lot of men have right now. Like, how is God going to use me? We're going to tell them how God can use them. We're going to encourage them to do the work. So here's something about this model I want you to realize. This has the capacity to reproduce itself rapidly. Somebody could be mentee for a while and then become a mentor. I mean, a generation of mentors could give rise to another generation of mentors within 6 months. Because we're not talking necessarily about changing somebody's entire life. We're just talking about giving them a compelling vision for how they can be influencing other people and activating them from being a good, faithful Christian to being a good, faithful Christian who is intentionally promoting truth in the lives of other people. We're opening up a series of channels, and this could happen pretty quick. One generation gives rise to another generation of mentors in 6 months. I mean, think about the exponential power of that within 5 years. So that, I think, is a compelling vision of spiritual influence. And I think we can use that vision when we are mentoring people. We can say, look, what we need is this. And when we set this up, it provides opportunities for us to meet people, spend time with them, get to know things we never knew before. And as we set up these channels, what we're actually going to be doing is setting up information distribution channels for FTNCI. Because the people that we choose, they're going to be inclined to share the things they believe, including things that we believe, and that are core to our project. So we individually expand our personal connections. We're building a conduit for FTNCI's unique material to reach people in a way that overcomes many of the hurdles that we've been seeing, especially the hurdles of not having teaching positions. Like, I'm not a pastor, I'm not a Bible college professor, I'm not platformed by recognized experts. Doesn't matter, because we're going to be creating our own channels. A lot of people will be open to taking this idea seriously if it comes from a person that they already know personally. And that's the obstacle, is that typically things like Christianity and unique ideas about philosophy, they're not the kind of thing that you just pick up from somebody you saw on Twitter. If you have somebody in your life that you trust and that you know, and they believe it and they talk about it, that will get you to want to take the idea more seriously and give it more consideration. And so this is how we do that. We create our own channels of one-on-one influence, and we use those channels to distribute FTNCI's material as much as is strategic to do. So most people who are able to understand FTNCI's ideas are not going to be YouTube stars, not going to be bloggers, but they might be willing to be mentors. And so we can actually call people to action in this way, and it's realistic. They would not see their main goal as a mentor to be, I'm going to propagate FTNCI's material. That's not it. But they're gonna see their goal as, I like what I saw Jacob doing. I like what I saw Ryan or Andrew or Isaac or Cody doing, and I want to be doing that too. And so their motivation is not like, I want to platform FTNCI. Their motivation is something that's more sustainable than that. It's, I want to experience God using me personally as a mentor to another person. I want to help another person grow in a well-rounded understanding of Christianity and life, including ideas about morality and including ideas about politics and all the things that we do talk about at FTNCI. So, in other words, this value-based mentoring model is going to provide an answer to a challenge that we have long encountered among those who are friendly to our ideas but are not intellectual themselves. They are saying, okay, I agree, but what do I do with these concepts? We're answering that question. And since we're equipping people to be mentors, they're going to need the answers that we provide. They're going to actually come to us and ask us questions like, hey, my mentee said this. I don't know what to advise him. Well, that's what we specialize in. So we're going to be generating demand for our intellectual content, because After all, mentoring is moral mentoring, and that's what we do. All right, so now this is the point in the video where I'll wrap it up. I'm inviting discussion. I've shared the concept. I want to invite you to let me know thoughts you may have. Does this model work? Would you be willing to become part of the plan by taking specific actions yourself? What actions would you be willing to take? That's where I will leave you. In the discussion, if you want, we can also brainstorm potential themes for FTNCI meetups. I have a list of themes here, and you'll be able to see that in the doc. I'll send this to you as a Google Doc as well. But the main question that I really want to focus on is, do you think this model works? And would you be willing to become part of a plan by taking specific actions yourself? That's really what I'm asking you, because this only works if the kind of things that I just told you make you want to go do something. And that's what I'm going to ask. Do you want to go do something in light of what I just said here? All right, thanks for listening. I'll talk to you soon.